800,000 years ago, Earth was a living battlefield. Ice ruled the north, jungles devoured the south, and in between lay endless forests, ancient, damp, and dangerous. Every shadow could hide a predator. Every rustle in the dark could end a life. And yet, through this chaos, small bands of early humans dared to call this wild planet home. Picture this: a night without light, where the only thing separating life from extinction was the dim flicker of fire. A group of humans huddled together, the flames reflecting on faces carved by hardship. Around them, the sound of breathing, not just theirs, but something larger, slower, and closer than comfort would allow. In the distance, eyes glowed, the gaze of a saber-toothed hunter. These people had no weapons of steel, no shelters of stone. Their protection was instinct. Every parent, every elder knew that survival meant more than feeding the tribe. It meant guarding its heartbeat. The children, those tiny, fragile lives, represented everything worth fighting for. One mistake, one moment of distraction, and the forest would claim them. They learned to listen, to sense, to move silently beneath the stars. The rhythm of the earth became their language, the rustle of leaves, the cracking of twigs, the whispers of the wind through the pines. From this dance between fear and courage, something extraordinary was born, the first spark of human strategy. They began to think beyond instinct. They planned. They protected. They endured. Imagine that moment. The first mother who kept the fire burning through the night. The first father who stood awake, guarding the camp as the cold bit his skin. These were not mere acts of survival. They were the beginning of humanity's story. The birth of care, of unity, of love in its most primal form. Because even then, under the threat of predators and storms, one truth burned brighter than any flame. To protect the young was to protect the future. If this journey through ancient Earth fascinates you, hit the like button and share your thoughts in the comments. What do you think life felt like 800,000 years ago? Long before civilization, before weapons and walls, fear was the oldest teacher. It whispered through the branches, crawled beneath the skin, and shaped every heartbeat in the ancient forests. For the first humans, fear was not weakness. It was survival. The world they inhabited was merciless. Giant short-faced bears prowled the northern valleys. Cave lions hunted in coordinated silence, and packs of wolves trailed the scent of the living with patient hunger. Even the night itself felt alive, full of unseen predators that thrived where human eyes failed. In this darkness, the earliest tribes began to understand something profound. Fear could be shared. When one person felt danger, the entire group felt it too. It was the first collective emotion, the spark of social awareness that tied their fates together. They started to recognize warning sounds, to distinguish between the crack of a falling branch and the stealth of an approaching predator. Their instincts evolved into communication. The forest forced them to become listeners. Every leaf rustle, every bird cry, every silence carried meaning. When the jungle went quiet, even the children stopped breathing. This wasn't just fear, it was adaptation, the transformation of terror into understanding. The tribes began to create rules, invisible codes passed from parent to child. Never sleep without fire, never wander after dusk, always listen before moving. These unwritten laws became the foundation of trust and cooperation. Fear had carved the blueprint of human society, and deep inside every human heart, that primal pulse remains. The reason you feel uneasy walking alone in the woods, the chill that crawls up your spine in darkness, those are echoes from that distant age, reminders that fear once kept us alive. From the trembling leaves of those ancient forests, humanity learned not only to survive, but to sense the world. In the heart of those endless forests, one truth bound every tribe together. The children were sacred. They were not just the weak or the young. They were the promise that the tribe would see another sunrise. Every small heartbeat was a future hunter, a future gatherer, a flicker of hope in a world built on danger. Around every campfire, ancient rituals unfolded. Some tribes painted their children with red ochre, believing it made them invisible to predators. Others whispered protection chants to the stars, calling upon unseen spirits of the forest to watch over them through the night. Whether through superstition or instinct, each act carried the same message: protect the young at all costs. Mothers were not the only guardians. In these early human clans, the bond between individuals was woven tighter than blood. The entire group took part in raising and shielding its youngest members. Hunters brought back the softest furs to wrap the newborns, while elders taught songs that warned of danger through melody and rhythm. These were the first lullabies, not of comfort, but of survival. Every gesture, every sacrifice revolved around one idea: continuity. The tribe existed not for the present, but for the next generation. The children were living time capsules, carrying knowledge through memory long before words existed. And yet, their protection came at a cost. When food ran low, when predators lurked too close, choices had to be made. Who would eat? Who would watch? Who would fight? These were not decisions of cruelty, but of necessity. Through pain, humanity learned compassion. Through loss, they learned the value of life. Fear taught them awareness. Love taught them purpose. Together, they built the foundation of something far greater than survival: the birth of family, the sacred circle that has never been broken. In the smoke of their fires, they didn't just see warmth. They saw tomorrow. When the sun vanished behind the mountains, the forest changed. The air grew colder, heavier, as if every living thing was holding its breath. Night belonged to predators, to creatures whose eyes pierced darkness and whose patience outlasted fear itself. For the early tribes, this was the true test of survival. They built their defenses not from walls, but from fire. The flicker of flame was both weapon and symbol, a fragile light that pushed back the wild. Around every campfire, sentinels took their posts. Hunters who had spent the day tracking beasts now guarded the perimeter, their spears ready, their ears tuned to every whisper of the night. Smoke curled upward like prayers, while the smallest children slept at the center of the group, surrounded by bodies that formed a living barrier. Each ember carried a promise that no creature would cross into the warmth of their circle unchallenged. But predators were cunning. The great cave lions, the striped hyenas, and even the silent leopards of the ancient woods stalked the edges of human scent, waiting for mistakes, for silence, for sleep. To survive, the tribes learned to rotate their watch. Some guarded, others rested, and before dawn, they exchanged places with precision that bordered on ritual. The rhythm of protection became their heartbeat. They placed stones in rings, left burning logs near entry paths, even scattered bone fragments to mark territory, the earliest forms of defense strategy. Yet, the most powerful guardian was not weapon or fire, it was unity. Fear shared is fear halved, and courage shared is courage multiplied. In those long, sleepless nights, the first seeds of cooperation were sown. Every shadow that moved beyond the flame reminded them of one truth: they were not the strongest creatures in the world, but together they were the most determined. And that determination, that refusal to yield to the dark, became humanity's most enduring armor. Which ancient survival strategy do you think worked best? Fire, teamwork, or instinct? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Daylight offered no mercy, only different dangers. When the first rays cut through the fog, the tribe rose to face the wilderness once again. The night had tested their courage, but the day demanded skill, the ability to hunt, to track, to defend. And in that cycle, every role mattered. Among the early tribes, there were no heroes, only balance. The hunters were not just killers. They were providers, defenders, and strategists. Every spear they carved was a declaration that humanity would not remain prey forever. The women, too, held power in ways that transcended the hunt. They gathered, nurtured, and healed, ensuring that the tribe's heart kept beating even when the forests claimed their strongest. Elders carried memory. They knew the habits of predators, the migration of herds, the secrets of medicinal roots. Their words were not commands. They were warnings written in time. The youngest listened, wide-eyed, learning not through stories, but through the rhythm of survival itself. In these lessons, courage and care were indistinguishable. The act of hunting was not just about food, it was a dance with death. The hunters moved silently, reading the ground for tracks, following trails of broken twigs, smelling the air for the faint musk of prey. Each movement was deliberate, because in this age, a single mistake could turn hunter into hunted. And yet, within the danger, lay unity. When they hunted together, they trusted one another with their lives. That trust, that shared pulse of determination, was what truly set them apart from the beasts around them. Even in the kill, there was reverence. They thanked the fallen animal, offered parts of it to the fire, believing that nature demanded respect for every life taken. Through such rituals, humanity began to define morality, not through words, but through action. The protectors of the tribe were not always the strongest. Sometimes it was a mother shielding her child from the cold, or an elder keeping watch while others slept. Each act, no matter how small, was an echo of the same truth. Protection was the essence of being human, and as the smoke of their fires rose toward the gray sky, one idea burned quietly in their hearts. They were no longer merely surviving the world. They were beginning to shape it. Long before language had shape, sound ruled the world. The ancient forests were not silent. They were alive with voices. The crack of branches, the distant roar of predators, the wind weaving through colossal trees, all were signals, warnings, and guides. For the tribes, sound became both map and memory. The jungle spoke, and those who listened survived. The humans of this age learned to interpret the wild symphony around them. The rhythm of rain meant safety. The sudden silence of birds meant danger. The howls of beasts revealed their distance, their hunger, their direction. Every ear was trained, every breath measured. At dusk, when the light faded and shadows melted together, the tribes gathered near the fire to read the night through sound. The sharp call of an owl could freeze a heartbeat. The rustling of leaves could mean a stalking predator or a returning hunter. To live in such a world was to exist within a constant dialogue between fear and awareness. And slowly, something extraordinary happened. The humans began to imitate the sounds they heard. They mimicked, animal cries to communicate, to warn, to deceive. The first traces of language were not born from words, but from echoes, from attempts to control sound, to use the forest's own language against it. Through sound, they created connection. Through imitation, they created meaning. These ancient voices laid the foundation of speech, of art, of music yet to come. Each whistle, each hum, each call that traveled through the trees was a thread in humanity's growing intelligence. But beyond communication, sound was a weapon. Some tribes learned to use rhythmic drumming on hollow logs to scare predators away or to signal distant allies. The forest answered them with its own heartbeat. Thunder, wind, rain, and humans for the first time felt like part of something greater than fear. In those echoes they heard not just the jungle, but themselves. The sound of survival had become the sound of humanity's awakening. In a world ruled by instinct, intelligence became the tribe's, invisible weapon. It wasn't about strength or speed, but foresight, the ability to see what others could not. The ancient humans began to realize that survival was not a matter of reacting, but of anticipating. When predators grew bolder, the tribes adapted. They built traps, pits covered with branches, sharpened stakes hidden beneath leaves, stones balanced to fall at the right moment. These were not simple tricks. They were the first expressions of strategy, of planned thought. For the first time, humanity turned the chaos of nature into a predictable pattern. Each night before the hunt, groups would gather around the fire, drawing in the dirt, studying the behavior of their prey. They had learned that every creature, no matter how fierce, had habits, and habits could be exploited. They understood when the cave lions rested, where the mammoths crossed, when the wolves circled too close. Every movement of the wild became a piece in a puzzle that only humans could solve. There, intelligence was not born from comfort, but from necessity. Hunger sharpened memory. Fear forged creativity. The mind became the deadliest tool of all. Sometimes their traps were not for food, but for protection. The entrances of caves were rigged with alarms of sticks and stones, designed to wake the tribe at the slightest touch. Others spread ash or soft soil around the camp to track footprints, learning who or what had approached during the night. In those small, brilliant acts of survival, humanity began to think beyond the present. They could not overpower the beasts, so they outthought them. They turned observation into power, and power into survival. That moment in prehistory, when a human first smiled at the success of a plan, was the dawn of intelligence as we know it. It was the moment we became more than prey. We became creators. What do you think was humanity's greatest early invention? Fire, tools, or strategy? Leave your thoughts in the comments. Shelter. It was more than protection. It was identity. In the prehistoric world, a home was not built. It was found, shaped, and fought for. Every stone wall, every cave mouth, every branch hut was a fragile sanctuary against an unforgiving earth. The tribes learned early that the world beyond the firelight was not neutral. Storms could strip flesh from bone, cold could freeze breath mid-air, and predators never rested. To endure, humans began to tame the elements themselves. They dug into the sides of cliffs, fortified caves with mammoth bones, and used hides to block the wind. These were the first homes, not for comfort, but for survival. Inside these shelters, life took on rhythm. The crackle of the fire became the pulse of the tribe. Around it, stories were born, not of words, but of gestures and flames dancing on cave walls. The fire was more than heat, it was meaning. It turned night into day, fear into focus, and strangers into families. For children, it was magic, the flicker of light. Against their faces was a lesson in safety, in belonging. For adults, it was vigilance. Fire meant security, but it also meant exposure, a signal to any creature in the dark that humans were near. So they guarded it fiercely, never letting it die. Some nights, when the flames weakened, one would whisper, "Keep it alive, or we vanish with it." Through trial and intuition, they learned to carry embers wrapped in moss, to spread fire from camp to camp, to breathe life into dying coals. Fire became the heartbeat of migration, a thread of light that tied generations together across landscapes of danger. And from that glow, humanity began to change. The warmth softened their nights, the light extended their hours, and the smoke carried their scent high into the stars. It was here, in the flicker of that fragile flame, that humans stopped merely reacting to the world and started commanding it. From caves to campfires, from fear to mastery, the story of shelter and fire was the story of transformation. The moment when humanity learned not just to survive the world, but to shape it. Even as humanity evolved, leaving the forests and ice behind, something ancient stayed within us. A silent inheritance written in the nervous system, an echo of a world where fear and protection were one. This was the instinctive legacy. Inside every modern heartbeat lies a rhythm older than civilization. The jump you feel at a sudden noise, the unease in darkness, the instinct to shield a child. These are not learned behaviors. They are memories, carved into the flesh of our species by hundreds of thousands of years of survival. For the ancient tribes, this instinct was not an option. It was the difference between life and extinction. A mother's sudden sense of danger, a hunter's pause before stepping forward, a child's cry silenced at the approach of footsteps. All were part of an unspoken language of survival. And though the world has changed, the code remains. Science would later give these reactions names: adrenaline, fight or flight, intuition. But for those first humans, they were sacred signs from within, the voice of ancestors guiding them through peril. Their instincts did not just protect, they united. When one tribe member felt danger, the entire group moved as one body, one heartbeat. And so, generation after generation, these responses became embedded in human identity. The twitch of awareness when the forest went silent, the thrill of watching fire dance, all reminders that we were once prey and predator in equal measure. Even today, under electric skies and concrete walls, that legacy whispers. The way parents wake at the faintest sound from their child, the way we seek light in darkness, the way we still feel awe before thunder and flame. It is proof that evolution may change our form, but not our essence. We are still the guardians of our young, still bound by the same primal instinct that kept our ancestors alive 800,000 years ago. And as we look back across the gulf of time, the question remains, did we conquer fear, or did fear shape what we became? 800,000 years have passed, and yet, in so many ways, nothing has changed. The forests are different, the predators wear new shapes, and the fires now burn behind glass and metal. But the same instinct that drove those early tribes still beats within us. When the ancient people looked into the flames, they saw reflection, the promise that their children would see another dawn. Today we look into the blue glow of our own modern fires, screens, cities, machines, and see that same promise. The tools have changed, but the purpose remains, to protect, to endure, to build something that outlasts the night. Every time a parent shields a child from danger, every time a community unites against the unknown, the story repeats. It is the same story that began in the wilderness, written first in fear and love. Humanity was not shaped by conquest or comfort, but by care, the need to guard what is fragile. From the first spark to the first word, from cave to civilization, we have carried that promise through fire and storm. The tribes that once huddled together under freezing skies have become the architects of the modern world, yet their whispers still echo through us. The way we flinch at thunder, the warmth we seek in light, the instinct to gather in crisis, they are all memories of a time when the world was vast and we were small. But here is the truth that endures. Survival was never the final goal. Connection was. The instinct to protect was not only for blood, but for belonging, for tribe, for humanity. That bond forged our identity, one generation after another, unbroken through the ages. So when we look back to those early forests, to the guardians who stood watch through endless nights, we are not witnessing strangers. We are looking into a mirror, the reflection of who we have always been. The story of life 800,000 years ago was not the beginning of fear, but the beginning of love, the fierce, unyielding kind that would carry us through every era to come. If this journey through humanity's first great struggle moved you, stay with us for the next chapter, where we uncover how fire didn't just protect life, but transformed the destiny of our species.